multiple of our projects today, is we're using what we call commissioning consultants to help us make sure that our our mechanical designs and electrical designs and so forth are all meeting our goals, the sequence of operation of those designs. We meet together as a team. So this was just a recent shot of everybody working together. Our field operations team has been really good about introducing retro commissioning along the way. Their team and their staff have been part of all these meetings since the design days of this project. And now we're implementing in the field. So we check ourselves to see if we can make these goals all together. So that just gives you a little bit of a highlight of where we're going, how we've been so far, and what our targets are. And now where we are in progress. So again, last month and this month have all sort of blended together in terms of activities, but we are meeting our marks with what we expected to be at this point in time. I know that we've talked a little bit about our schedule and if we're going to be on time and so forth. We're still holding for late first quarter. We've been tracking about anywhere from 6 weeks to 8 weeks of a little bit of gray area and into that. So that would still put us at the end of the first quarter of next year. However, we still feel that by summer we'll have a better handle on where we are. And part of it is because of the amphitheater. With so much work we have to do with the amphitheater to get that right. But next month, and actually starting tomorrow, we believe the first units of masonry will start being installed on the building. So you'll start to see a lot of activity pretty quickly there. And then we're going to dry in the roof. So now that all that equipment is upstairs, we're going to go ahead and finish the roofing on top of that. The screen walls that you see up there will come later on in time, but getting the building dried in and getting the masonry up is going to be a really big push for the next 3 months. I would like to remind and add that it's a big thank you to all of you here, because without the ability to early procure these materials, we would be running behind even more than we'd like to be. In the sense that we wanted to be dried in and potentially conditioned by summer so that we can put in a lot of the interior finishes and without missing a beat. Received news this morning that our entry service section, which is really our electrical gear, is on track. We expect it to have arrival to the site in April. It's going to take about 2 months to energize it and put it together, but having the mechanical units bought early and now in place and connected, and having the SES connected will allow us to energize the building just in time for summer, and so we can continue on for finishes. So a lot of choreography is going on behind the scenes, and it's just-in-time delivery for a reason. So again, we appreciate your support on that to be able to do that. With that, that's the update for this month, and open to any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Garcia. Excuse me, I lost my voice for a second. So if I understood what you were saying there, we're looking at probably third quarter of 2026?
End of first quarter of 2026.
What were you saying about next summer then?
Oh, I really mean
By this summer?
By this summer,
Oh,
that will
okay.
be ready for, yes, Mayor and Council, I apologize for the
All right, thank you. And I
introduction.
did have another question on the energy reduction and energy savings. I know when we've done performance-based contracts, we go through an ROI exercise on the amount of additional cost to save the energy, and how long does it take for us to break even? Have we done that on these investments in the energy savings?
Mayor and Council, Vice Mayor, I don't know for sure if we modeled that yet with our field ops team. This was only specific with the design process at this time, but we could look into that for sure.
I'd be interested to know what that is. Thank you.
You bet.
Thank you. Thank you. Ms. Bauer.
Annexation application AN-262 for approximately 15 acres located north of West Glendale Avenue and west of North Alsop Avenue.
Mayor, members of the council, here to provide staff report is Deputy Director of Development Services, Tabitha Perry.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. In 2019, City Council approved an annexation policy for the city, providing objective criteria for the evaluation of proposed annexations citywide. The intent of the policy is to serve as a tool to facilitate, direct, and manage growth. Today's presentation complies with the policy. Staff is seeking input and a consensus to proceed with the annexation application, with a final vote on the annexation application at a future City Council public hearing. The applicant is proposing 2 parcels at approximately 15 acres, located northwest of the northwest corner of Glendale and Alsop Avenues. The subject properties are located within the county with a zoning district classification of RU 43, which allows for single-family residential dwelling units. Should the properties be annexed into the city, the most compatible light zoning district applied would be RR 45, which also allows for a single-family residential dwelling unit. The applicant intends to request a rezoning to PAD, Planned Area Development, permitting industrial land uses. The subject area is located approximately 13 miles from City Hall. Currently, there are no additional annexation applications in the subject area. The subject properties are located within the north contour, which by state statute defines incompatible and compatible land uses with the military base. The companion rezoning application will consist of land uses that supports the base. The subject area is depicted in hatch marks and is within the city's municipal planning area, with properties annexed in the city depicted in yellow. The subject area contains a detached single-family dwelling unit and accessory structures, which will be demolished for a future non-residential development. The property is surrounded by existing single-family residential homes and vacant land. Properties located within the city limits are developed or will be developed with industrial types of land uses. During the rezoning application process, staff will work with the applicant to achieve appropriate development standards. Staff coordinated with a third-party firm, Applied Economics, to assemble an economic report consisting of estimated fiscal impacts for various development scenarios for the subject property with a positive net fiscal impact to the city. One-time fees paid to the city for an industrial land use development is estimated at $1.3 million. In addition, the projected annual net benefit to the city could result in $80,000. The slide before you depicts development scenarios and the estimated annual net income, revenues minus expenditures per scenario. The pending PAD zoning application contains a conceptual site plan that depicts an approximately 223,000 square foot flex industrial building. The average of the hypothetical development scenarios, a blend of warehousing and manufacturing, brings forth an estimated annual net income of $80,000. Should council direct staff to advance this application, the next step would be a blank petition hearing for public input only, followed by an additional public hearing for adoption. It is anticipated that the rezoning application will be presented and voted on following the final action by council on the annexation application at a future public hearing meeting. This concludes the presentation, and as a reminder, staff is asking for a consensus to proceed with the annexation application.
Any questions?
I do. Thank you, Ms. Perry. this creates basically a county island, essentially. It's not, it's surrounded by county land on all four sides. Basically residential, but Maricopa County, which, you know, I know we prefer to have contiguous annexations within our existing annexation area. So you said that this is gonna be, zoned for a warehouse, 200 and some thousand square feet?
Mayor, Council, the proposal is for an approximately 223,000 square foot flex warehouse building.
Is the height of that warehouse included in the proposal?
Mayor and Council, I don't have the exact number or the height for the proposal, but per their PAD, they're asking for the maximum height not to exceed 56 feet.
I can't support this. I think we should be the best neighbors people have, not the worst neighbors people have. You know, this is a rural residential area. There's a couple of reasons. It's a rural residential area. 56-foot-high warehouse in the middle of a neighborhood is, I believe, not being, my opinion, not being a good neighbor. And it's not a contiguous annexation. It creates a county island. So I won't be providing consensus for this. Thank you.
Any other questions? No other questions? Okay. Is there a consensus for them to move forward?
No.
Yes.
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 Okay, we do have consensus. Thank you.
Thank you.
U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, Community Planning and Development Grant Investment Recommendations.
Mayor, members of the council, here for the next item on our agenda is presented by Matthew Hess, our Deputy Director of Community Services.
Thank you, Mr. Phelps. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Today we will be presenting, discussing, and requesting consensus direction on specific activity allocations from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, Community Planning Department. That includes our cumulative block grant funding, home investment partnerships, and emergency solutions grant. As part of that discussion, we'll provide just highlights of some key accomplishments of the programs that are currently being undertaken, our staff analysis of needs, a little refresher of the discussion that we had in December for the consolidated plan goals, and then we will also talk about specific activities that the Community Development Advisory Committee has recommended to fund with each of those funding sources, as well as some reallocation of prior year funds. That also includes the public services, CBG Public Services grant allocations, which has also been provided as a recommendation by the CDEC. So the first program we'd like to provide you with an update on is tenant-based rental assistance, or TBRA as we call it, that is funded with the Home Investment Partnerships Program. We've had that program in operation for about 2-3 years now. It is a transitional housing program, so it is designed for what we call low acuity or low barrier homeless folks to get case management services and assistance with the rent while they transition to self-sufficiency over a maximum 2-year period. Since the program has began operation, 75 households with 216 individuals have successfully obtained housing. As I said, all were previously homeless. Average time from application to lease up is about 130 days, and the average monthly rent subsidy is about $1,350. Additional programs where we've had some successes are, you're very familiar with our low-income housing tax credit projects that have been we've been undertaking for the last couple of years. We've got 7 in process, about 524 of the almost 1,400 units that are under construction have been completed and are being leased up right now. I know the Centerline project is nearly completed, the one at 67th Avenue in Glendale, and there is a not groundbreaking. There is
Ribbon cutting?
Thank you. On March 6th, total city investment in those projects is about $6.2 million, and those remaining units are scheduled to be completed by the end of this calendar year. The emergency home repair program is funded with some of our CDBG funds. One of the things that we've done recently is we've transitioned operation of that program to internal staff. We had a subrecipient agency doing that for us for a number of years. So bringing that program in-house has allowed us to be able to serve folks a lot faster. You see that a little more than half of the people served in that program are qualified seniors. Since we started processing applications internally, that occurred in September, we've assisted 22 folks. We've also put in a procurement efficiency so that we're able to actually get bids a lot faster and secure contractors considerably faster. I expect that 68-day completion time to come down. We are now able to serve people as they come. So right now we do not have a wait list, and our goal is to not ever have one again. Top needs are plumbing and HVAC. Electrical is also something that is often requested. So just as a reminder from our discussion from December, the purpose of this discussion is to allocate funding from those sources to specific activities. Those activities have to be consistent with goals in the needs assessment, or the consolidated plan as we call it. So we're in an unusual year because we're doing both the consolidated plan, the needs assessment for the 5-year period, and the planning, the activity allocations at the same time, because our previous consolidated plan will be expiring. So per the council's consensus direction from December, we have 4 goals. I apologize, that should say increase, not promote. Additional affordable housing, homeless services, access to public services for vulnerable populations, and then advancing fair housing, which is a HUD requirement. Again, the needs, our research indicated, as was supported by the CDAC, is that renters are still having trouble finding places and being able to afford places. Homelessness is still with us. We have made improvements, but there's still definitely great need. And the CDAC feels that sustaining existing programs is the recommended action. So just to give you a brief idea of the type of funding we're talking about, and I will hand the presentation over to Ms. DeLeo in a moment. We are expecting level funding. We never know exactly how much money we're going to get. Usually sometime, the earliest I've seen it is February, the latest I've seen it is June. So it's very difficult to predict, but this process takes a considerable amount of time. So we undertake the full process, starting at the beginning of the year. So level funding for each of those funding sources is about $3.2 million. There's also about $278,000 of prior year funding from mostly from CDBG that you see up here, and I'll hand things over to Ms. DeLeo to discuss specific funding recommendations.
Thank you, Mr. Hess. Good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Council. As Matt suggested, we do have about $3.2 million that we would like to discuss today for allocation for HUD grants. The first goal of the Consolidated Action Plan is to increase access to affordable housing. And through the CDAC, we are recommending the following allocation of about $2.3 million of CDBG and a small portion of our home and program income reallocation. We'd like to continue the residential rehab program. That is also the emergency home repair program that Matt earlier mentioned. It is a city-run program. In addition, we recommend about $825,000 be allocated to the continuation of our tenant-based rental assistance program. We would also suggest, as recommended by CDAC, the public housing improvements. This is water and energy conservation repairs and improvements to public housing. It is items that have been presented in the public housing capital improvement plan, as well as our low-income housing tax credit delivery. This small amount is being recommended to cover the cost of HUD reporting, labor standards that are required to complete these projects. as well as implementing a homebuyer assistance program in the sum of about $210,000. We would be looking at a procurement to procure a contractor or a partner in the community to deliver this, and it would be along the lines of direct financial assistance to new homeowners in the Glendale area. The second goal of the Consolidated Action Plan is to increase access to homeless services. There's $236,000 that the CDAC is recommending allocation for. Predominantly, it is the ESG 2526 allocation that would go to Rapid Rehousing and CAP Eviction Prevention Program. Additionally, there's a small reallocation of CDBG CV funding that we're recommending be reallocated to the Glendale Works for the ongoing operations of that. That is a current contract that the city has with the Glendale Works and Phoenix Rescue Mission. And then lastly is a cleanup item. The council previously approved the Foster Youth to Independence Program. In a final accounting reconciliation, it was noted that $1,857 was more than what previously was approved, so we would like to just clean up that item and do a final reconciliation of that with the reallocation of program income. The third goal is increase access to public services for vulnerable populations. The Community Revitalization Division took a grant application cycle in December-January timeframe, and we received 19 applications with a sum of about $662,000 requested. In your packet, you did receive a copy of the matrix that the Community Development Advisory Council took and used to review each one of these applications. They were reviewed under the basis of the quality of their application, the completeness of their application, the overall impact to the Glendale community, the financials, as well as the ability to fulfill the terms of the HUD regulations and the contract terms. Ultimately, the CDAC, in reviewing them, is bound by the HUD regulations of 15% of the total CDBG allocation. So based on our estimates that we assume we will receive for CDBG, we estimate about $352,000 is available for our public services applications. As Matt mentioned earlier, that would be adjusted when we receive the final allocation, and we would prorate or prorate up or prorate down the final allocation based on the actual amount we receive from HUD.
I'd like to clarify something very quickly. Thank you, Trelise. The matrix, I believe, is in your grant application binder, not in the council pack, the one that we distributed a number of weeks ago.
Thank you for that. So as you will see here, these are the recommended allocations from the Community Development Advisory Council. There are a total of 9 nonprofits recommended. There is one recommended that would provide services to disabled population, 2 to youth populations, domestic violence, there are 2 recommended, and then 4 recommended for senior population. And it would equate to $352,732. We are seeking your feedback and consensus on this particular, on these funding allocations, and I will open it up for any questions at this time.
Questions? I did have one question, if I can find it here. On the foster youth, that cleanup, the $1,800, slide 8, we're still doing that program, yes?
Yes, Mayor, members of the council, the vouchers that we have from HUD are still in effect and are being used. That item was for some assistance for landlord incentives to get them to actually rent to those clients. And that's consistent with another program we have just for generally the Housing Choice Voucher Program, but there was an activity that the council approved specifically to help actually pay for those moving costs for foster youth. And so that, as Ms. DeLeo was indicating, the final reconciliation for that indicated that.
All right. Well, and the reason I was asking is I think most people know a good majority of foster kids, as they're aged out and they have to go and start living by themselves, very, very trying for them, very difficult for them. I just want to make sure we were continuing to do that.
Yes, Mayor, the program continues.
Very good.
Mayor?
All right, any other questions?
Mayor?
Go ahead.
Yeah, so my question, of course, 100%, I support this. This is really, really important to me. I'm looking at the numbers in terms of the emergency home repair. There was 22 households served. Also in the tenant-based rental assistance, there was 75 families or people served. Can you help me understand, for example, the public housing improvements, if those are the same thing, so that's $750,000 for 22 households? Or $825,000 for 75 households. Am I getting that correct, or am I miscalculating?
So Mayor, Councilmember Conchas, those are different activities with different accomplishments. So the 750, for example, is public housing. The Public Housing Authority has an obligation to maintain and improve their units. And so there are no specific accomplishments proposed for that money right now. It would include increasing ADA access to a number of units of public housing. It would include replacing a number of HVACs, also some water conservation and other energy conservation work. The 22 households that you're referencing are for the emergency home repair program, which is a separate program. And so that's what we've accomplished so far since we brought it in-house.
Okay.
And then the TBRA is the same. It's 75 households that have been assisted or that have been housed through that specific program. So those are all separate.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you, Mayor. I do have a question on the emergency home repair. Is there a cap? The average repair was $47.93. So that's probably not enough to pay for a new AC unit. So do we cap this, or does it depend on what the repair is, or how does you can explain to me a little bit better how that works?
Certainly, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the council. We don't have a hard and fast cap because we're not quite sure what people are going to need when they come to us. We know that an air conditioner costs about $10,000 these days. You might have some significant issues that we need to address that would exceed that number. I can tell you that the staff is very mindful about not doing more than what is required. So it's not like we have a specific cap, but they are always mindful of making sure that the resources, the funding is spent appropriately and not spending beyond what is necessary to arrest or address that particular health or safety issue.
Okay, thank you for that. Yeah, that makes sense because, you don't want to keep doing repairs to a unit that breaks down every summer and we're just putting more money into it, and it's really what needs to happen is it needs to be replaced, so it's good for another, 10 or 15 years. I do want to say, I believe that there's an increase in programming for seniors, and I'm pleased to see that because, they have fewer options. Seniors do. They're generally retired. They're not working anymore. Transportation's an issue for them, so I'm very pleased to see that there's, I believe, more programs for our seniors this time. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you, Vice Mayor, for talking about seniors. I think I'll mention seniors in a different discussion about Rose Lane Community Center and potentially having hot meals, but I think that's a different department. In terms of goal 2 with homelessness services, would this also encompass our heat relief program or our partnership?
Mayor, Councilmember Conchas, not specifically with this funding. So we are gearing up for the heat relief response, including our respite centers, hydration stations, et cetera. But that is not contemplated because it's not being funded with this money. So we do have some carryover ARPA funding that we received from Maricopa County that they are letting us keep. And we're gearing up. It's just not part of this conversation because it's different funding.
Thank you. And I did have Pastor Perry at St. John's Lutheran Church request a caseworker for that heat respite, and I wasn't sure if it's federal, local, or state. So if we can have a follow-up conversation on that, I would really appreciate it. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay.
I was just curious on the foster youth to independence. How many youth are normally assisted on that?
Mayor, Councilmember.
What's the
Guzman.
average?
I want to say it's a couple of dozen. I'll have to verify that. So those are specific vouchers that HUD has provided to the city for that very specific purpose. So I believe it's a couple of dozen. they are available as people, like the Housing Choice Voucher Program. The voucher stays with the city, so if someone were to graduate or sort of, I guess, abandon the voucher, like they move out onto their own, they no longer need that, an additional person would be able to obtain that voucher.
So there's not a limit to how long they can have the voucher?
Mayor, Councilmember Guzman, to my knowledge, no, there's not a limit as to how long they can stay on.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor. I do have another question. So we don't yet know what our allocations are going to be, and that could come, you said, as late as June, possibly. So what is the process in the event that the funding is cut, there's cut somewhere? What is the process to go? Does this go back to CDAC, or what do we do then?
So Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the council, we would need to evaluate as staff what the nature of that cut is, and come up with some options and bring those back to the council for some additional consensus.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I have one question, and then I think we're ready to move on. At one point, if I, and correct me if I'm wrong, but at one point, vouchers, the city of Glendale was not getting vouchers given directly to us. We were getting those vouchers from, I think, Mesa, and I think we were getting some from Phoenix. Is that correct?
Mayor,
And now we're actually getting vouchers to the city of Glendale that we don't have to go to other cities and ask for their leftovers. Is that correct?
Mayor, members of the council, are you referring to the foster youth or just in general, the housing choice?
In general.
Voucher? In general, we have always had an allocation of vouchers to the city. I would have to investigate. That sounds familiar, that we were able to get some of those additional vouchers, but I would have to investigate before I gave you
Okay, and I can
solid.
check with Mr. Lee too. He can fill me in on that. Okay, last question?
Yes, just one last question. Is there a glossary of terms available that we use as a city? Because I know that I work a lot with housing, and even just saying the word homeless, all were previously homeless. Is there a glossary of terms or definitions for these type of things?
Mayor, Councilmember Conchas, nothing written per se. These are all HUD definitions, and so that's all written into the HUD regulations and all of their different guidance, and so we use HUD definitions for each of these.
Thank you. I'll just go ahead and look them up there.
We can certainly provide that to you as well.
Nothing. It's fine. Thank you.
Okay, we have a consensus?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, there you go.
All right, thank you.
Next item.
Council item of special interest, Velma Teague Library.
Mayor, members of the council, here to provide staff report on both item number 4 and 5 is Kimberly Hall, our Director of Community Services.
Thank you, Mr. Phelps. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Today, I will be presenting 2 CIOSIs regarding Velma Teague Library. One special interest item from Councilmember Turner and the other from Councilmember Conchas. With me, I have Deputy Director Don Farrow for Libraries, as well as a Library Administrator, Kristen Fletcher-Spear. Right. So we will start with Councilmember Conchas's request for CIOSI. So the request was around reviewing the needs of the library and the potential of a historic designation consideration. So the analysis would include reviewing the needs and amenities, the repair needs, et cetera, for Velma Teague, the historic designation consideration, funding source, as well as timeline. With this request, we believe that it'll take approximately 40 hours of staff time to complete this CIOSI. So today, what I'll be asking is consensus to continue on with this research and review based on the CIOSI. And I'd also like to add, there are 2 presentations because there were 2 CIOSIs for Velma Teague. I wanted to honor both requests, but at the end of the next presentation, I'll ask for consensus if we can combine both of those requests. So I'll pause for questions or
Yeah,
discussion.
go
Mayor?
ahead.
Well, first off, I want to clarify and thank Councilmember Baldenegro for essentially saving the library, and that this council item of special interest came at the workshop before we ended up doing that piece in the voting meeting. So I just wanted to clarify the timeline about this council item of special interest. And I really appreciate the opportunity to discuss with you all of these things. And I did get some information already about historical designation. It's my understanding that there is none, and there's no opportunity for that. So I just wanted the council to know where this council item of special interest came from, and also thank Councilmember Baldenegro for essentially saving Velma Teague. Thank you.
So I'd like to request consensus for us to move forward with the 40 hours we'll need to focus on this interest item.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
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 there you go.
Thank you.
Next.
Council item of special interest, Velma Teague Library relocation.
Okay. So this is in regards to the Velma Teague Library relocation. The purpose would be to allow all council members an opportunity to review and discuss, and of course, review all options. The analysis would include, with regards to Velma Teague, that we potentially do nothing. Secondly, remodel in place. Third, reconstruct elsewhere in the park. And lastly, relocate to the promenade or another space. We believe that it will take approximately 40 hours of staff time to complete this CIO-SI. And I can take any questions, discussion, and are asking for consensus.
Thank you, Mayor. This is my item of interest, and I'm asking that you support it so that we can get back on the right track regarding the Velma Teague Library. As we're all aware, it came to the council prior to the seating of the newer members, and if you'll recall from the PowerPoint presentation at that meeting, we have some issues there that we're going to be faced with regardless, and some like to call issues opportunities, and I think that there's an opportunity here. At the time, we were told that it was going to be at least a $5 million investment into the existing capital just to keep the doors open for the next few years. If we were going to do the type of remodel that it needs, as far as the renewing it kind of a remodel, not just to keep the doors open remodel, that was in the neighborhood of $17 million. The cost of building a new library building, and that was to do it inside the existing library. The cost of building a new building there in the park was also going to be in that same area of over 17 million. And then there was the opportunity about relocating it. And at that time, I know I was hoping that the council would open things up to get some community input and to give our library board also an opportunity to actually study the issue and to then bring back to us some recommendations. And I think that's where we got off track, and I think that, you know, if you've taken the wrong fork in the road, that the thing you have to do is back up and take the right fork. And I think that the right fork for us would be to go forward at this point and do one of two things: either assign this subject to our library board and let them hold some meetings about it specifically, maybe do some of their own research and exploration of ideas, and see what recommendations they might come back with as far as what the proper library for the downtown area should include in the way of services and amenities, and also the location. Or the other option I think could be useful is to do what we did with the light rail study, and we set up an ad hoc citizens committee and allowed any resident who was interested in it, resident or business owner for that particular one, but anyone that was interested in serving on that committee and that was willing to dedicate themselves to attending 7 or 8 meetings about it, to do that. And I actually think that that would be a great thing for us to do on the Velma Teague Library, and that they could be brought up to speed about the kinds of things that are offered in other libraries around the country, particularly downtown libraries, that we're not offering here in Glendale and weren't part of the discussion presentation back in December, I guess it was, or before November. And really let the residents, with the support of or under the umbrella of the library board, do a real look at what libraries offer nowadays and all the different types of things. Not just looking here in the valley, but actually maybe looking nationwide, some of the best of the libraries, and see what might fit well here in Glendale. It's hard to go into a restaurant and know what to order if there isn't a menu. But even if there's a menu, you're pretty much limited to those options. So I think, to use that example in this case, that they could actually look at what's available in, restaurants all throughout the neighborhood, or in this case, libraries all across the country, and decide what should be on the menu for us here in Glendale. So I'd like to hear what other council members think. This, based on the financial needs of the library, it's not going away. I will say that I've talked to dozens of residents, and I'm sure many of you have as well, and what seems to be, from my interaction, is that most residents almost uniformly want a library to stay in Murphy Park. And almost uniformly, they want it to remain the Velma Teague Library by name. And there's plenty of them that are not. Some are attached to the building itself that exists there, the 1971 slump block building, but others see the opportunity to build a better building, maybe a 2-story building, so it would have a smaller footprint, but would have as much or more square footage, and that would actually face towards the park and bring that park atmosphere, make it available from the inside rather than how it is now, where you really, once you're in the library, you don't really know you're in a park anymore. But the opportunity there to design a library that incorporates the park, and then also, because it has a smaller footprint and perhaps is not smack dab in the middle of the park, opens up more space in the middle of the park, because a lot of people like that idea too, of having more open space with more grass, more trees in the central part of the park, and that it might help to better connect the amphitheater to the restaurants and shops on the streets facing it, and provide more relaxing and more pleasant environment throughout the park itself. So, but I'm suggesting that all of that, I'm not saying that, I mean, if it was me, yeah, that's what I'd do, but I'm saying that we need to let the citizens give us the input, let them study it, and bring back to us a recommendation.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Can I ask Councilmember, I'm not sure I understand the concept of the ad hoc committee, because how would that, because we have a library committee, so I want to understand, I don't want to bypass or overstep the citizens that are volunteering already for the library commission.
Thank you, council member, and good question. I agree with you. We have a 7-member library board that basically gives us recommendations for our library system as a whole. We could ask them to do this function either with a committee under them, or we could do an ad hoc committee, just like we have the Citizens Transportation Oversight Commission or committee, to oversee our transportation program. When we were talking specifically about light rail in one part of the town, then we decided that an ad hoc committee that anybody could belong to, including, in that case, there were some CTAC members that joined the committee, and just as in this case, there would be no reason not to have library board members, if they wanted to participate in the deep dive on this, then they could as well. I'm just saying that there's basically two options. I think that for this issue, the second option, the having the a committee that more people could belong to instead of just 7, and to be able to do a deeper dive would better serve us.
Mayor, if I could, I don't know that it's necessary. I mean, I know I had advocated to slow this down and have a public meeting, and a council member that's no longer on this council had agreed to do that and then changed their mind at the very last minute, because I do believe, and this actually, we had an issue with the Foothills Library when I was a brand new council member, and we held a big public meeting. We heard from the entire public. I mean, there's opportunity for the public to speak to us and to the Library Advisory Commission. I just don't want to, I just don't want it to get to, I don't know. I just don't know whether, I'd have to think that through, whether I think that's a good idea. I think the Library Advisory Board has the opportunity. They could hold a public meeting and all stakeholders could attend and be heard, where they're, presented with the ideas, and they could give their opinion like we've done on other issues where we invite the public in and let them look at concepts and ideas and then discuss it. And then, I don't know, they've used stickers, they've used other ways to find out what people's preferences are. I'm open to that. I'm just not sure if that would complicate the issue. Thank you, Mayor.
My personal view is we have a library board. I think we should start off with them, and if there seems to be traction and a lot of ideas, I think potentially after that, then an ad hoc could be very beneficial. But I think I'd rather start off with what we got first before we take the next step. Although I think this could be important enough to where we need that ad hoc. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Mayor?
Go ahead. Ladies first.
I'm in agreement with Vice Mayor Tomachoff and yourself. I think that we should go through this with the Library Commission that we have.
Okay. All right, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Part of the thought process that I was thinking of was, in my mind, was having a group of people that met, and how you want to define this, how you want to establish this. I'm just going to speak out loud. Of teachers, parents, students, of business owners, of the librarians, of city employees, of the library board already, and having them all meet together, so that we can really get a robust conversation of what we want. Also, some construction people, at least one that would say that is not possible because of this thing, whatever reason, to have the conversation. Because if they pick something and then we get to a conversation like that can't be done without, or something to that effect. And then the other thing I want to add is, if we can, I don't know if we can, where the analysis to include do nothing, remodel in place, reconstruct elsewhere in the park, relocate to the promenade or another space. I'm going to say it right now, and I'm going to say it consistently until we're completely done with the library issue. I don't know how this is getting misunderstood. I don't want the library to move now from the park. Some people are saying that he's just pressed pause. He's going to demolish it again. He's going to send it somewhere else. That's what they want. That's what they want. I don't know how many times I need to repeat this, but I'm going to repeat it now, and I hope this is kind of like forever. I want the library to stay in the park. If consensus means I have to leave that fourth option there because for protocol, I understand. I'm still learning these kinds of things. I never had to live with protocol per se. I would like that removed if that's possible without disrespecting Councilman Turner. That last relocation part. I don't know if I can or can't, and I'm not trying to mess everything up and set everything on fire again. But I don't know how to convince everyone, and I hope this is where I can. I would like to fulfill Martha Dennis's request to leave the library in the park. I don't know how I can say that anymore. And again, I'm not trying to disrespect anybody here on the council or anybody that's out there. If I have to give consensus to this and leave that part in there, then I just understand that's part of the discussion. If we can move forward consensus with this and remove that, I would prefer that without disrespecting Councilman Turner's, CIO. I just want to make that perfectly clear that my intentions 100% are to keep the library in the park.
Mayor, members of the council, since the request today is just getting a consensus to move forward on the studying of the item, you can make that type of change if it's the consensus of the council to remove that as an option. Or remove that as a piece of the future analysis, I guess.
Right. Councilmember Baldenegro, what myself and the Vice Mayor and Ms. Guzman were basically saying is, let's have the people that we already put in place that's over the library to make recommendations. Let them make their recommendations, and then from that point, we can tweak it. We can go to a full committee. But right now, it's just simply to allow them to do what we've already tasked them to do. Nothing more than that. We're not making a decision. We're not voting to leave it or take it. We're just going to let the people that's supposed to be representing the library do their job and make recommendations. Then we can go from there.
If I may, Mayor, thank you. I guess I just want to make this perfectly clear. As Councilman Malinar said the last meeting, that it's being published in newspapers. People are repeating this, that we just want to push through this so you guys can forget it so we can move it later. And that's all we're doing, these nefarious things. And it's starting to get really frustrating that continues to be the conversation. And I'm trying to just convince everyone the best I can, and that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Okay.
Mayor.
You're good.
Mayor. Thank you, Mayor. As much as I love Martha Dennis, I think this needs to be, the community needs to have a voice. I love Martha. She's been a great citizen of Glendale, but we can't just listen to one voice. We have, and I think the mayor and I are in agreement that we send this back to the Library Advisory Board. We probably let them know that one of the options on the table for them is to seat an ad hoc committee if that's what they decide to do. Yeah. And then we go from there. But I understand your position, Councilmember Baldenegro. I'd like to welcome you to the club of what's printed in the newspaper may or may not be true. But that's how this goes. So, I don't know if Martha watches or is listening. I love you, Martha, but there's a lot of people that had an interest in this issue, not just one. And there needs to be an opportunity for them, as I had said when we first talked about this, is let the community be heard. Whatever the end result is, at least they've had an opportunity to be heard. So I think that's what we're trying to do now, is to, as Councilmember Turner said, back up, turn the car around, go a different direction, and send it to the Library Advisory Board, as long as they understand that they could seat an ad hoc committee. I would like to see them know that that's an option for them, and then let them decide how they want to move forward and make recommendations. Thank you, Mayor.
Mr. Melner.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree to move this forward as far as a council item of special interest. All the details we've been talking about, I don't think we're ready today to make those decisions as to what options there are. I think that's the purpose of this council item of special interest, is to present those, to come back with accurate numbers, realistic timelines, and that kind of thing. And I expect that's what this is going to do. Going to the library board would be good, but I also believe a big part of this must be that we engage the community as a whole, that we do additional surveys, that we really find out what the community thinks, not just 1 or 2 or 10 or 20 people, but what the community believes about this and what they would like to see. And then we can move forward from there. And this is a real, I'll agree with Councilmember Baldenegro, we're restudying this, we're re-looking at it as far as what's going to be the best for the community and what is their input. We've had some community input. I haven't seen any big surveys, but I've seen, some smaller ones, and we've had people come to council meetings. But I'd like to make sure that whatever we do as we move forward, that we have a robust discussion with the community, whether that's council meetings, ad hoc, or whether it's just the council goes out or the city goes out and puts on these meetings. We need to engage the community. This is an important topic, and we really need to make sure we engage the community on it.
Okay. Any other comments? We have a consensus?
Sorry for the late comment, Mayor. Mayor,
Yes.
and council, I agree with Councilmember Baldenegro about putting some kind of like perimeter in terms of removing the idea of relocating to the promenade park, to the promenade or other space outside of the park. And the reason is because then, you know, yes, we have our library commission, we'll have ad hoc, and we'll have input from the community, but then we could just get ourselves right into the same place that we were in at the end of last year. So I will give consensus to this, but I do want to state for the fact that I want to keep it in the park, and I agree with Councilmember Baldenegro about putting those parameters on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. One more item I'd like to add. I hope I'm describing this correctly. Forgive me if I'm not. If there are plans and funds being allocated and used right now for redesigning of the park around the current footprint of the library, I would imagine it would be in our best interest to not go any further with that, because we don't know what we're going to do. I'd hate to think that we're going to spend, for this conversation, $1 million on redoing the park around the current footprint, and then something change, and then we just have to now explain it. We just wasted $1 million fixing a park that we were going to tear up again anyways to build another building. So if there's design and other things time and effort being spent to redesign the park where it's at right now, we may need to put a pause on that, just so we know exactly where we're going before we do, if I'm saying that correctly. Thank you.
You are, and again, really, all we're asking right now, or basically, I think the direction that most of us are looking at, is we're not making any decisions other than the people who are tasked to make recommendations get together, make recommendations. From there, we either accept, we change, it's totally up to this council. We don't have to listen to them. It's advisable to listen to them, because then they're not going to want to do their job if we don't. So, and that's really, I think, in a nutshell, that's the main thing right now, is just get to the next step to find out what do the citizens want. They may say, leave it alone, don't do anything to it. I don't know. But, so that's the consensus that I'm asking. Do we have a consensus to at least get it to the library board, so in the future they can come back and make recommendations?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And lastly, Mayor, if we can also get consensus to combine both CIOSIs, so when we workshop, we're workshopping one versus two different.
I had thought about that earlier, because one of them has a piece in there that shouldn't even be in there. It was yours, and I'm trying to remember which part it was.
The historic part.
Yeah, you said that we couldn't do it if we wanted to.
I believe, Mayor, are you talking about the historical designation?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and after research and talking with city staff and other council members, it's basically not
Right.
feasible, and
So
and
that's
it won't happen.
Well, that was what I was referring to. So if we know we can't do that, at least take that piece of it out, so you're not wasting money and time, staff's time, on something that we couldn't do if we wanted to.
Mayor and council, understood.
Yeah, everybody good with combining them?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Mayor, if I could have a closing comment, so I'm not left out. It would certainly be based on the conversations I've had with the residents that seem to be most concerned about this issue, and also my personal feeling too. It's hard to remove that. I certainly don't see myself supporting moving it out of, the library. I believe the library moving it out of the park. I believe that's where this library belongs, and I think that's what the community supports. So, this is not an attempt to try to relocate the library again. It's an attempt to get the right library that our residents want, need, and can use in our downtown. Thanks.
All right. Okay, so we did have a consensus for that.
Yes, thank you.
You guys can go home. Maybe I shouldn't say that.
That was easier than it
Go
could
back
have
to
been.
work, yeah. All right, item 6.
Council item of special interest, artwork along the Loop 101 in Glendale.
Mayor, members of the council, here to provide staff report on item number 6 is Purab Adabala, our interim director of transportation, and he'll be assisted by Ryan Lee, our director of governmental affairs.
Good afternoon, Mayor and council members. We are here in response to Vice Mayor Tomachov's council item of special interest, specifically enhanced artwork along the Loop 101 within the parameters of 75th Avenue to 51st Avenue. Residents in this past November approved Proposition 479. It's the second continuation of the county's half-cent regional sales tax. Those monies are used to construct new freeways and enhance or expand existing freeways, which is what we're seeing currently with the Loop 101 widening project from the I-17 to 75th Avenue. When these construction projects are planned, the municipalities within the freeway jurisdiction are invited to consider additional investments in artwork. Again, that is a local obligation, not picked up by the region or the half-cent sales tax. So currently, we are in the early stages of making those improvements to the Loop 101. ADOT has begun construction with an estimated completion date of 2027, spring of 2027. And so the Maricopa Association of Governments, oftentimes referred to as MAG, approached the cities of Phoenix and Glendale to consider whether we wanted to invest in additional artwork along the Loop 101 freeway. So we're going to go through existing aesthetic themes and then talk about the potential for additional artwork recommendations, and then talk about the final steps should the council agree to invest additional funds. So looking at the Loop 101 in Glendale, you're going to see a variety of artwork throughout the city. You're going to see artwork on the sound walls. You'll see artwork on the pillars between lanes, and then also artwork that's on the ground that's incorporated with the landscaping. You'll see existing walls, aesthetic walls. So you'll see the variety of artwork that's performed or included in the sound walls. On 63rd Avenue, we have a pedestrian bridge that was installed and considered artwork as well. And then on the next slide, you're going to see an aerial view of existing landform graphics. So these are curbing and coloration to show the different designs and aesthetics that are placed on the freeway on both sides of the ramps. And you'll see an aerial footage or a ground footage of that same existing landform graphics. And these examples are on both sides of the freeway at 59th Avenue. So here's a map of the existing artwork within the city of Phoenix and the city of Glendale. You're going to see that the city council made significant investments in artwork when the freeway was first constructed. And you'll see some gaps in the artwork closer towards the 51st Avenue area. We'll talk about those recommendations next. So you have some potential aesthetic enhancements. I want to note that the existing landform graphics will all be refreshed as part of the current contract. So the existing investments made by the city council, those will be repainted and refreshed without our expense. So that'll be an enhancement picked up by the region. I will note that the landform graphic on the westbound Loop 101 at 75th Avenue won't be refreshed because it's behind a barrier and it's in a well condition. So it didn't meet the wear and tear of the other landform graphics. And so what can we do as a city to enhance the artwork along the Loop 101? You'll see a map here. Currently, there is plans to refresh half of the sound walls, and we are in discussion with ADOT to complete all of that, the painting. So we want to see the sound walls from, it's going to be from 51st Avenue to 75th Avenue completely refreshed. And then also there are sound walls from the I-17 to about 43rd Avenue that we're going to ask ADOT to additionally refresh as well. That way there's no changes in the paint schemes from a sound wall that was painted maybe 20 years ago versus a new sound wall that's going to be installed as part of the construction process. So again, just recapping from the slides, we'll see a refresh of the sound walls being painted, and also the landform graphics that have already been installed. We'll get a refresh with those. And so in Vice Mayor Tomachoff's request for the council item of special interest a few weeks ago, she had mentioned that ADOT had approached both cities, and we had asked for specific recommendations that would allow us to enhance the artwork, the beauty of the city, the gateway into the West Valley, but also do so in a uniform fashion that is complementary to the investments made by the city of Phoenix. And so this report is showing additional investments that both cities can make that will be uniform in the aesthetics and welcoming to our visitors. So let's start on the west end and move into towards the city of Phoenix. Currently, there's existing sound walls have mountain patterns on them. There's existing retaining walls with mountain patterns and existing mountain graphic landforms on both the eastbound and the westbound side. And so there are no additional aesthetic enhancements recommendations by the Maricopa Association of Governments. If you look at 67th Avenue, there are existing sound walls that have mountain patterns, existing piers that have mountain patterns you can see on the bottom right. And then there are existing mountain pattern landforms on both sides that will be refreshed, and an existing abutments are too small for this swirl icon placement. So currently we have those aesthetics, and MAG is recommending that if we want to pursue additional aesthetics in this location, that we would installed landform graphics to be placed on each side of the freeway between 75th Avenue and 67th Avenue, totaling about $80,000. If you continue to move east, there's no recommended changes for the bridge at 63rd Avenue. And then as you move into 59th Avenue and the Loop 101, there's existing sound walls that have the mountain patterns. There's the existing piers that have the mountain patterns in between the two lanes of traffic, and there's existing landform graphics. So there are no recommendations or recommended enhancements at the Loop 101 and 59th Avenue. Now, the larger cost in the discussions this afternoon would be at the Loop 101 and 51st Avenue, which is the border between the city of Phoenix and the city of Glendale. Currently, a recommendation by MAG would be to install 4 coiled snakes at the different slope paving quadrants you can see on the top 4 slides, and then also apply some of the smaller saguaro aesthetics, and that totals together about $230,000. And then the existing sound walls with the standard rustic patterns are currently there and would be refreshed. And so you'll see in the next slide that there is, this shows the additional investments made potentially if both cities do have an interest in moving forward. You'll also see that on this map, you're going to see birds of flight patterns on some of the sound walls that are located in the city of Phoenix as well. And so in these next couple of slides, we talked about what those designs would look like. You'd see the landform graphic between 75th Avenue and 67th Avenue. And then the next slide will show what the coiled snake would look like at the Loop 101 and 51st Avenue. And then the potential small saguaro aesthetic enhancements on the walls there at the Loop 101 and 51st Avenue as well. Now, after we submitted these slides, I have had a conversation with my counterparts at the City of Phoenix. So potentially we were unsure about how we would split or handle the 51st Avenue and Loop 101 expense, but because that is a border between our two communities, the expectations from both cities would be that we split that cost, and that reduces the cost dramatically from approximately $310,000 to $195,000. And so you'll see now the question before the council is, do we invest in the additional aesthetics, and where do those funds come from to pay for the enhancements? We looked at two different pots of money, given that this is art, but it's also a transportation project. So we do have a balance in the arts fund. Traditionally, though, the money that's used for the arts fund is used for commissioned art. It's very rarely do we purchase prefabricated art outside of hiring someone to really enhance or beautify a project like we would see at the DCRP or other locations throughout the city. Also, if the challenge with going through the arts commission is that we would need to seek their recommendation as a commission and then bring that back to council. And if the interests don't align, then just as we had mentioned with the library commission, council would need to make the decision of whether or not to supersede the arts commission, and that will take some additional time. We also have some transportation funds where artwork was used on the Loop 303 to pay for some of the artwork that was completed when we built the 303 in the early 2000s. And so really that's the question that we have for the city council today. The timeline and the expectations moving forward, if the council does choose to invest in this additional artwork, the city of Glendale and the city of Phoenix, who has expressed interest in moving forward, so they're going to be advancing the artwork along the corridor in their city. The next steps would be that the city of Phoenix, the city of Glendale, and Maricopa Association of Governments enter into an intergovernmental agreement, and MAG will assist with a contract change order that would come back to council for final approval. And with that, Mayor and council members, we're here for questions.
Mr. Lee, I've got a question for you, and Council Member Tomachov may know better, but pedestrian bridge. I don't remember exactly where it's at, between 67th and 59th, I think.
It's between 59th and 67th.
Yeah.
It's at Mayor and Council, it's at the 63rd Avenue alignment.
Okay, so I was good on that. Several years ago, that thing lit up, if I remember right, it was purple. And I don't remember the last 1,000 times I've driven through there having any lights on that. Is that not lit at all?
Mayor and Council, that is correct. So what they call the rope lights, which were LED lights along the outline of the bridge.
Okay, well, I mean, you confirmed what I suspected, but if we're interested in an entranceway into Glendale or leaving Glendale and something that looked really cool, we were the only ones that had one that I'm aware of anywhere probably within 20 miles. I'm just curious why we don't repair that along with the other stuff you're trying to do. But to me, that I think really made North Glendale really stand out. Anyone else has?
Mayor, if I
opinion?
could, I believe the copper was stolen, and that's why it hasn't worked. And I know if we did that, we'd have to make sure that it was somehow secure so it couldn't be pulled out of there and stolen again.
So Mayor and Council, I can answer that. So back when that existing LED fixture failed, to repair that kind of facility, it requires freeway closure. So we have to be closing the freeway. So it's a lot of coordination cost and inconvenience for traveling public. So it was not necessarily, and the cost that's associated with all the ancillary stuff adds up to substantial amounts, which is why we moved away from that LED lighting. So as an example, when you're doing any repair on the bridge, you cannot have cars traveling on the freeway underneath. Because if things fall down, it could be a safety hazard. So you have to be closing the freeway underneath.
I do understand that, but I also understand, my wife and I have been married for more than 42 and a half years, and I can tell you the last thing that my wife wants to think her taxes are paying for are snakes. She don't do snakes at all. So I don't know how many other people feel the same way, but, to me, I'm just thinking, that really, in my opinion, when I first seen that, really made North Glendale look awesome. And I know LEDs are substantially cheaper than they were 20 years ago. So, I don't know. If there's a possibility of resurrecting that, I'd love to see it. But it was just an observation that I had. Again, with the snakes, yeah, my wife's going to tell me, yeah, that was dumb. So, who else?
Mayor, if I could, thank you. These snakes are going to not be alive, so for one thing.
It doesn't make any difference.
And I'd be happy to do a council item of special interest on that bridge. And I mean, I know I know Mr. Phelps and I have discussed that over time. It's a complicated thing to try to go back and redo that because of what we had there was so easy it was easy to vandalize it. That's why it's not been replaced. So changing it, as we were told, is probably not safe. But I mean, I'd be happy to do that as a separate item of interest. As far as this, I mean, 51st Avenue at the 101 is the northern entrance basically to our city. And I don't know what the reason was when the initial planning for the Loop 101, why that area was not thought of, that it just was excluded from any enhancements. And I mean, I don't know the answer to that, why that is, but we've set a precedent already on the 303 that we don't want to have the ugliest stretches of freeway run through our city. So, obviously I'm in support of this. I think it's important. We're going to be running Part 479. We're going to be continuing this down through our sports entertainment district. We're going to want this in the sports entertainment district. I wouldn't believe we wouldn't want to have we're not going to want the ugliest stretch of freeway to run through that part of Glendale either. So I think that it's sometimes just the little things like improving the right-of-ways, like we're doing with the right-of-ways, is investing in some of the little things that actually people notice about our city. So my concern about the Arts Commission is somehow or another in the beginning phase of this, before there was just internal conversations with staff and ADOT and MAG, somehow or another this got kind of lost in the shuffle of bigger picture items. And so we're kind of, I believe, Mr. Lee, if I could have you confirm that we're in a little bit of a time crunch also to make this decision. Is that correct?
Yeah, Vice Mayor Tomachoff, so much so that ADOT's actually going to be completing the improvements to the 75th Avenue interchange anytime between the end of this year and early next year. So the work is going to be advancing quickly.
So, I mean, I don't really care one way or another where the funding comes from. I mean, we did use transportation funds for the 303. I just don't know how complicated it becomes and how long it would take to go through the Arts Commission. And then I'm not sure, as you said, that really this is in their wheelhouse of the kind of recommendations they make. So I know I'm blindsiding you, and I apologize for this, Mr. Bailey, but is there anything the Arts Commission was established by ordinance, is that correct?
Mayor and Council, yes. That's
so is there anything in the ordinance that would preclude the council from just deciding to allocate $195,000 of the arts fund to this project without going through that process?
Vice Mayor, I haven't looked at the ordinance, so I got to take. I need to look at that before I give you a definitive answer. And I'm pulling it up here as we speak. But if you want to continue talking and I can get back to you, that'd be great.
I mean, as far as the transportation budget, I mean, it's kind of a drop in the bucket. $195,000 is a very minute. It shouldn't, and maybe I should ask our interim director. I mean, this isn't going to affect anything that we're doing within our transportation department for this amount of, it's pretty small amount of money in the big picture of what the transportation budget is. Is this gonna have any effect?
Mayor and council, as Vice Mayor mentioned, 195,000 is, in the big scheme of things, a small number. But there are higher priorities for the transportation funding source payment and providing match for the 479 proposition funding that the region is providing. But if council, mayor and council decide to use transportation, I think we can make
Okay.
that happen.
And I mean, there are some other issues surrounding 479. We're going to be taking paratransit right off the top. The passage of 479 is going to have a very positive impact on our transportation budget too, which is something to consider. Is why I don't think it would be a big problem to take the money out of transportation, because some of our really big transit ticket items are coming right off the top out of the regional money, we did get the presentation. It's going to leave a lot more money in our transportation budget because of how we're going to be funding some of the big ticket transit items in transportation. So I'm open to whichever way we want to pay for it. But I think it's important that we continue on enhancing, the entrances to our city, whether they're on the freeway or whether they're, on our streets as we're doing with the right-of-way. So I'll step off my soapbox for now if other people would like to speak.
Mayor, I would like to know what is the staff time hours for this project, since we get that at pretty much every council item of special interest for consensus. What would be the staff time hours?
Mayor, Councilmember Conchas, the majority of this work would be done through MAG and in their work with ADOT. So MAG funds and engineers the freeways, and ADOT constructs and maintains the freeways. And so the staff time, while I don't have a specific number, I can say it would be minimal. It's more of working with our city manager Phelps and identifying that funding source and getting that back to council. But the construction, the design, and the engineering and the construction would be done by outside sources.
Thank you. And I would like to request the staff time hours, like the specific amount, because as the director said, there are other priorities for transportation at the moment, especially, in my district as well. So I would like to know what the staff time hours are. Thank you.
Mayor, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Regarding the transportation fund, so are we saying, Mr. Bailey, you're looking up to see what would be the fastest way to get the money, since they're already going to start on the project, would be to go through the transportation funds? Also, I'd like to know, the money that's in the arts fund, is that allocated for other projects already?
Who are you asking? Okay.
Whoever has the answer.
Mayor, members of the council, I think Assistant City Manager Rios will have an exact number, but every year we have unallocated balance within our arts fund, so we can get the exact information for you. What I would just maybe is, this is strictly a policy issue, but remember that even with the transportation, while it's a bigger number, we have match requirements, one, that we have to make sure we can have resources for. And then two, yes, while the budget is bigger, the demands and the needs within transportation are correspondingly big as well, whether it be right-of-way maintenance, whether it be, pedestrian safety improvements, whatever. So assuming that you can use your art fund, you may want to say that you can't use art dollars to repair right-of-way or median or put in crosswalks, but you can use transportation dollars for that. You may want to factor that into your policy discussion.
Yeah, you.
Go ahead.
Thanks. Councilmember Turner here. I'd rather see it come out of transportation. I'm not in favor of us taking out of the arts without having the Arts Commission having a chance to weigh in on it. Just like the conversation a moment ago about the library. And then while we have unspent funds in the arts account, we also haven't spent much effort on really looking at what we need to do in our arts purchasing, except we have they're in the process of or have just completed their arts master plan. And you may recall a few months ago or a year ago, we had a conversation about restoring the 2 million that was removed from the Arts Fund back during the recession era. And the decision was, well, let's not do that until they come up with a master plan. And so all that said, I'd still rather take it out of transportation. We're talking the 195 out of 95,000, and or general fund. Take it out of the general fund, and then continue using the arts fund in the way we have in the past, which is for original art, commissioned art, a little bit of performing art, but not boilerplate art. Thank you.
Mayor, I have a question.
Mayor?
Mr. Turner, go ahead.
Oh, okay.
That's Mallner.
Mr.
I'm
Melvin.
sorry, Mr. Melner, yes.
Yes, I agree with the concept of taking it out of something other than the Arts Commission monies. During our conversations last time we discussed that, we asked the Arts Commission and the city to come up with a master plan to tell us how they want to allocate that money. And they're in the midst of that. They're in the middle of it. And if we go in and we take, it may be $300,000, but or I think that was $295. I believe what you said. That's if they've got $1 million, that's a good chunk of their portion that they've spent studying the last year or two trying to determine what to do with the money. So I would recommend that staff take a look at where this money could come from, whether it's transportation or perhaps some other funds that have some available monies to do it. That would be my recommendation to move forward.
I had a question. I think, Mr. Lee, you had said something about some of the Arts Commission money was going to go for the downtown civic center, the city hall. Do we know how much that's going to be? Mayor, members of the council, we don't have an exact number on that. I believe we have a budget. I don't remember exactly what that number is, but that art is in the process of being commissioned now. So we will know. It'll go to Arts Commission, then it'll come here, but I don't have an exact number right now.
But that money that's in there now would go toward that probably.
Mayor, members of the council, that's correct, but the other thing that you may want to consider is that all of the projects pay into the Arts Fund on, or not all, but many of the capital projects, but we don't do that until the end of the year. So there will be another infusion of money into the Arts Fund at the end of this fiscal year when we sort of reconcile what projects have been completed and what's been paid for and how much the arts charge is on June 30th. We will transfer additional funding in there. And we've had quite a big CIP this year, so I imagine there will be another infusion in there. I just don't know how much exactly.
Okay.
We'd have to project that.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I also think that we should take the funds from the transportation department. Transportation.
Okay, I've got one final thing. I still wish that we'd get rid of these snakes. 4 snakes, $35,000 each is what we're gonna pay for these. $35,000 each.
Mayor, that was a recommendation and a proposal provided to us.
Wow.
That's the number in front of us at this time.
Yeah, are there options for coyotes or quail or any other desert animals? But I'm serious. I'm going to be an artist. I mean, there's way better money in that than being mayor. There's no.
Yeah,
Scorpion
Mayor, the question before the council is in front of us at this time.
Okay, well, my question to you is: there other options available for the art?
I'm not aware of any.
There's not.
No.
Okay, that's
Mayor.
what I needed to know.
Mayor.
Mr. Bailey, did you want to report?
Mayor and council, the ordinance speaks to the responsibility of the Arts Commission as a mandatory responsibility. It's not a permissive responsibility, and that all expenditures that arise or come out of the municipal arts fund, the Arts Commission has a responsibility to review those and recommend those. So the language says shall. So it's not it's a mandatory responsibility. So if you are going to utilize the Municipal Arts Fund to pay for these, my recommendation would be that you need to send this question to the Arts Commission.
Okay, so why don't we ask for consensus on transportation, funded by transportation?
Mayor, may I make a comment before we go into
You
that?
can make a comment.
Thank you so much. No disrespect to Vice Mayor or to the Choya District residents, but I cannot go back to my constituents, whether the whole city or Cactus District, and tell them that we paid $80,000 for this, $150,000 for 4 of these, and $80,000 for this. So I understand where the consensus is getting towards, like, which fund to put it on, but I just wanted to state that I don't want to give consensus for any of it. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So my question is, do we have a consensus for transportation money?
Yes.
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 Okay, so we got
Mayor?
that. We've got, go ahead.
I'm okay with transportation, but I think there may be other sources that I think we need to allow staff to take a look at and see if there's some other source.
Right.
Mayor, if I could,
Go ahead.
in response to that, Mr. Lee, we're in a very tight timeline here because we were a little bit late to the game to do this because the city didn't engage on this when the first opportunity arose. So I don't know that we have time for that. I certainly don't think we have time for the Arts Commission to get this on a calendar and have it come back to us. So I think that would be problematic, is to slow it down, because Phoenix has committed to split costs with us. So if we take too long, and Mr. Lee and I talked about this, that we're going to miss the opportunity to commit jointly, and then we're going to be on our own. So there's a savings in moving this along because Phoenix is splitting the cost with us at 51st Avenue.
Yeah, Mayor, Vice Mayor Tomachoff, that's correct. We don't like coming to council this quickly, and this is not something that we as staff are, certainly behind the scenes pushing for or trying to encourage. The truth is, though, that the freeway process, the freeway has been engineered and the improvements have been designed, and we're at a point where ADOT is under this pressure of getting a construction contract change order completed and the IGA entered into. And so that's the bit of the uneasiness, if you will, of us being in this position today, is that there are waiting, but it's also it's our funds, and so we're here at the direction of council to understand what the priorities and what the direction is.
Thank you. I'm fine with transportation. I thought we had a consensus to
We
use
do.
transportation funds.
We do.
All right.
Okay, so the next consensus is there consensus to go ahead and move forward,
Yes.
knowing that it's coming from transportation.
Yes.
As presented.
No.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, and I'm a no because of the snakes.
They don't bite.
It doesn't make any difference. Okay, that's all we have. City manager report?
Mayor and council, just for clarity, there will be an action, I'm assuming there'll be an action item that's being brought in front of the council. Perfect, okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's what I had mentioned in the next steps, Mayor Wires and Mr. Bailey, that this will have to come before city council.
Right.
Great, thank you. And my report is on our screen, so the staff can go ahead and roll that, please. Hi, everyone. I hope you all had a great Valentine's Day. As we all know, there's a lot to love about Glendale, so let's dive into some of the exciting things happening in our city. The Glendale Police Department will soon have a brand new space to store important evidence for investigations. Construction on the Myrtle Avenue site is about 70% complete. This new building will boost efficiency and expand storage. Voters approved funding for the project in the 2023 bond election. If disaster strikes, Glendale is ready to keep serving our community. We're strengthening our emergency plans with an update to our continuity of operations planning. This hands-on training helps city departments create backup plans in case of an emergency. It ensures essential services keep running no matter what happens. Pickleball is booming and Glendale is getting in on the fun. We're partnering with Chicken and Pickle to host pickleball clinics for all ages. Early this month, we held a clinic just for families. They learned how to serve and hit, etiquette, scoring, and safety. We've also had clinics just for kids and only for adults. They've been so successful that we're planning more. In the meantime, you can always play at one of our city-owned pickleball courts located in our parks. We're making sure city leaders have the skills they need to support employees. Human Resources and Risk Management is launching a new training program for supervisors this spring. This valuable new training program was developed by our great HR team. It covers key skills like managing employee performance, understanding workplace laws, and building strong teams. Classes will be offered in person and online. Glendale celebrated Valentine's Day in style, with music, dancing, and even a little adventure. Seniors dressed to impress and danced to classic hits at a senior prom at the Glendale Community Center. They played games, snapped photos, and even crowned a prom king and queen. Over at Thunderbird Conservation Park, women of all ages hit the trails for a Galentine's hike. They took fun photos along the way and enjoyed a sweet treat at the top. Great job to our Parks and Recreation team for putting together these fun events. Well, I hope you enjoyed that quick look at some of the exciting things happening in Glendale. I'll be back with more updates soon.
And City Attorney's report, Mr. Bailey.
No report, thank you.
Thank you. Council items of special interest, Councilmember Baldonegro.
None, sir.
Nothing? Councilmember Conchas?
None.
Thank you. Councilmember Guzman?
None.
Thank you. Councilmember Melner?
Nothing today, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Turner?
Not today, sir.
Vice Mayor?
Yes, Mayor, I do have one quick one. I have talked to our field ops director about this. I often get complaints from residents about, they love the bulk trash, but what they don't love is having it out there sometimes because the zones are rather large. I'm in zone 1 and it's a pretty large zone. And during monsoon and other seasons, the stuff's out there, it blows around, they've got to clean it up. Sometimes I've had residents tell me they'd had to clean up their pile multiple times before it's collected. So, and I have talked to Ms. Wantanko about this, and she suggested a council item of special interest, is if there was a way to create subzones or smaller quadrants so that people know, we're gonna come in this quadrant on Monday or Tuesday, give them at least a smaller window so that they have a better idea of when to put their stuff out. We see the people drive around and sometimes they, open bags, spill things in the street, and residents just get annoyed at trying to have to keep that pile clean until sometimes it's a week because I know the zones are large. So I just like to see if we could take a look at coming up with basically sub-zones or quadrants inside the zones and tighten up the pickup windows a little bit so people have a better idea of when they're coming. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Can I get a motion to go into executive session?
So move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, vote aye.
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 Any opposed, vote nay. Appears the ayes have it, do have it. We are going into executive session. With that, this council meeting is recessed.
Wait, do you know what it is?